from British Columbia. I'm here at a place called Hope Slide. I'm traveling this week. I've got my dogs in the truck there, about to head out. Since I can work from anywhere, as long as I have an internet connection, I figured why not work from the road. So today what I'm going to bring to you is what were the coolest things I saw at SIGGRAPH. SIGGRAPH is huge. You can only see so much. I probably saw 10% or less of what they had to offer. But I focus on render, I focus on storage, I focus on production operations, and I focus on studio operations. So with that in mind, I sort of selected a set of sessions that I could attend. And I'm going to bring to you today what were the coolest things that I saw at SIGGRAPH. So first, I want to thank everyone who showed up at our talk that my wife and I gave regarding remote technology and how everyone had to move to the remote workforce. We had a great turnout. I want to thank Zamir Hussein from Bot Effects for speaking there, as well as Craig Zeroni from Real Effects. And I also want to thank Steve Shapiro from Disney, who also used to work for Marvel in Disney, who added a lot of context and sort of candor about what's really behind the shift in opinions on security and sort of compromises that we're having to make to allow for remote. So thanks to everyone who showed up. We had a great turnout of around 126 people, and I think by the time we closed it, it was only down to like 101. So I'm very impressed with the turnout. Thank you. So one of the big things we talked about at SIGGRAPH, and then I went to a few sessions about, was moving to the cloud. Most of the studios are either moving to the cloud, looking at the cloud, or have moved to the cloud. There's a lot of things standing in the way. I did a talk last year about it. But rather than take up this video with it, I should have a video posted tomorrow, an interview with Scott Allen, who is a technical resource manager. He's been in charge of render farms at a couple of different studios. And he and I have a long conversation about the cloud and a few other SIGGRAPH related topics. So please tune into that video tomorrow. It'll be an interview. So one of the cooler things I saw at SIGGRAPH was ILM's Making of the Irishman. It was a fantastic problem-solving exercise, so that they had to basically do facial capture, but they couldn't use any dots on the face. They couldn't use any special lighting. They couldn't ask the actors to redo the scenes in a studio because they're method actors, and they needed to capture it all right there and in low lighting. So how do they solve this? They ended up mounting two Alexa cameras to the left and to the right of the primary camera that was shooting. They put infrared filters on there and infrared light rings around the camera, so whenever the primary camera was shooting, attached to it were the left eye and right eye view of the infrared. They were able to then take that infrared footage, and because it had a parallax, a left and a right eye, they were able to create the 3D view, and just through solving a little AI and procedural work, they did all that de-aging without any animators animating. So it was a testimony to project solving, ILM fixing things with cameras, which is going back to the old school. If any place is going to fix it with a camera-based solution, in camera, on the rig, it's going to be ILM. Their camera department goes back 40 years. So yeah, that was an interesting one. So another really cool thing at SIGGRAPH was watching the ILM's making of Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. And in this case, the ending battle scene had over 16,000 ships. And it took over 8 million core hours to render it, and they did it in a week. Now, if you reverse engineer that and you give them about 2 weeks, that means it's around 53,000 cores, or around 1,900 plus workstations, if they're 28 core workstations. And they threw out the figure that if you rendered it on one machine, it would take 900 years. If you don't know what a core hour is, basically a machine has, say, 28 cores. And if it renders a frame, well, that in 1 hour, that's 28 core hours. If it rendered a frame in 100 hours, well, then that's 2,800 core hours. So that's how core hours work. If you use the cloud, then you're very familiar with core hours because you're paying by the core hour. All right, next. Okay, I'm going to end on this last favorite of SIGGRAPH. And this was a Q&A on a 2.5-hour course that admittedly I've not finished watching the video on, but it's making machine learning work, and it's looking at production tools. This demonstration is a 2.5-hour video, goes through 5 production tools that are using ML, machine learning, and are currently in production or being used at studios. The attendees for this were Erica Doggett from Walt Disney Studios, Nudapong Chetenez from NVIDIA, sorry for the name there, I'm sure I butchered it, Kimball Thurston from Weta, Mike Urich from Ubisoft, Andrew Glasner from Weta, Pav Grachola from Sony. The panel was doing a Q&A, and I asked a question about the idea that studios have very large VFX farms that are at times idle or underutilized. And is there ways for the studios to take advantage of their CPU render farms, they're CPU based, or do they need to graduate to GPU to really get machine learning done? And across the board, it was almost all of the panel each commented that there are definitely steps that all the studios can make towards using traditional CPU render farms for machine learning tasks. I asked, it was a bit of a loaded question because I do know at one of the studios I worked at, that's in fact what we did. We kept a backlog of machine learning tasks that were done by sort of an R&D team that were always in queue. So whenever the farm started to come down or some portion of the farm was going unutilized and no other portions of the backlog could use it, they would go ahead and have machine learning tasks run on there. And of course, if we had some quiet time, those tasks really get a lot of farm into the tens of thousands of cores. And so I'm thinking I'm going to do a video and possibly an interview with some of the folks that are doing machine learning to sort of see how can you get started now. Even if you don't have an end goal for how to implement machine learning, having a portion of your studio start to get comfortable with the process is wise, because there's most of the movies you're looking at now, the big VFX movies, there's some part that's machine learning, whether it's the rotoscope, which is a kind of an AI-based solutions out there now for portions of the rotoscope phase. I've seen it used in animation and effects just a little bit. And I know it's being used in many other areas. I referenced The Irishman, where it was used to some extent. So yeah, it looks like everyone should be dabbling in it if you aren't already. And your CPU farm is a wasted resource if it's idle when it could be running machine learning tasks. So that was it. That's everything I learned at SIGGRAPH. Thanks for your patience here. Make sure you tune to my next video, which is going to have Scott Allen, which is a resource manager, and we talk about his SIGGRAPH experience, as well as cloud rendering specifically, and some other topics related to that. So please check out that video when it comes out in another day or so. I'm starting to run a little behind. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.